Hey everyone, my name is Dylan Novak, and I am the founder of Celebrity Evangelist Ministries. And I was recently contacted by the founders of Truth Inspired to give a video testimony and explain my ministry. And I want to start with the most important thing, and that is my testimony. I accepted Jesus Christ as my personal Lord and Savior when I was 8 years old. But I didn't fully give my life over to God until I was 20. And in between 8 and 20 is when the ministry began. So what my ministry is I share gospel materials with different celebrities. Some are receptive, some are not. And I would say the majority, I would say 95% of people are receptive. And it began when I was 13. I was asking my parents to take me to a comic book convention to meet some different celebrities there. And as I was getting ready to go to the event, I started watching interviews of the different people that I was going to meet. And I came across an interview of Margot Kidder, who played Lois Lane, where she said that she was an atheist. And I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, because that's when reality hit me that Margot Kidder was a soul just like you and just like me, who was on her way to heaven or hell. And at that time, on her way to hell. And I prayed that night and asked God to please send somebody to tell her about Jesus before it was eternally too late. And God convicted my heart and was like, well, what about you? And so I got some gospel tracts from my church, and I took them to the event and gave them out to everybody, and everybody was receptive, including Miss Kidder. And so for 7 years, from 13 to 20, that's what I would do. And in 2015, when I was 20, I had the opportunity to witness to James Taylor. And I almost didn't go witness to him because I wasn't a fan of him at that time. But I came across an interview of him in Rolling Stone magazine where he said he was raised by atheists, had no exposure to any faith, but he would be open to listen if someone would just take the time to show him. And that day is when I began handwriting letters to celebrities. Every celebrity receives a copy of the Bible, some different tracts, a handwritten letter explaining the gospel based on what he or she has said or asked about God or religion, as well as a copy of my friend Tony Nolan's book, Gasp. And so James Taylor was the first letter I ever wrote, because I thought, I want to say all these things, but I may not necessarily have the time to tell him. And I always put my contact information at the back. And I was able to have a few minutes, almost half an hour, honestly, with James Taylor. And he told me, he said, that interview was 25 years ago, and you were the first person to tell me anything since then. And that night, I drove home with the biggest smile on my face, the greatest joy in my heart, not because I successfully met James Taylor, but because I was doing what I knew God wanted me to. And that was the night I fully gave my life over to Christ. And since then, God has opened the door for me to share the gospel with over 800 celebrities. And I want to share briefly the most receptive story that I have in the ministry, and that is Jerry Lee Lewis, one of the original founders of rock and roll. Now, a lot of people would say, oh, he's been a Christian for years because he grew up in church, he went to a Bible college, he's even recorded gospel albums. But I would like to quote Billy Graham by saying, just because you sit in a carport doesn't make you a car. And that goes to say, just because you go to church doesn't make you a Christian. In 2015, Jerry Lee Lewis told The Guardian he woke up every night worried he was going to wake up in hell. And ever since I read that interview, I prayed and asked if God would open the door for me to be able to share Jesus with him. And God opened that door last winter. I didn't have very long with Mr. Lewis. It was in an airport terminal. But I gave him his gift, and he pulled out one of the tracts, and it said, how to make sure you're going to heaven. And I'll never forget, he showed it to his wife, and he said, he knew exactly what I needed. And he told me, he said, I'd like to stay and talk with you longer, but I can't miss my flight. And I told him, I said, my contact information's at the back of all the material if you ever want to get a hold of me. And a week later, he wrote me a letter letting me know that he had accepted Jesus Christ as his personal Lord and Savior. That's what this whole ministry is about. That's why I go and I preach at different churches, different youth events and camps. Every time I get behind the pulpit, every time I get ready to share the gospel with somebody, my goal is to see that soul come to know and accept Jesus Christ as their personal Lord and Savior before it's eternally too late. And if you would be interested in following my ministry, you can go to Celebrity Evangelist on Facebook or Instagram, or visit my website, celebrityevangelist.org. And that way you can stay up to date with what's going on in the ministry. Obviously, this year is the slowest year it's ever been because of the coronavirus, but there's still some events happening and doors are continuing to be open, and we're trusting God all the way. And again, thank you so much to Truth Inspired for reaching out to me to ask me to do this video, to share my testimony and share this ministry. And I pray that you all would join me in prayer for these celebrities, because God has not forsaken Hollywood, and neither should his church. God bless. Thank you.